You launched an investigation into ArriveCAN over allegations related to the destruction of records that were subject to the Act. Is destroying or deleting records that are subject to access to information requests a breach of the Act, and do your preliminary findings suggest that the law was broken in this case?
They are breaking the law.
And there are government departments and institutions that have chosen to ignore your orders and therefore are breaking the law.
This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Caroline Maynard, who is the Information Commissioner. It's been a while, Ms. Maynard. We want to welcome you back to Ethics.
Commissioner, it's a pleasure to have you back here. Before I get into some of my questions about your work, I'd like to ask you for your thoughts about ours. Our committee issued a report last year, and I wonder if you have any comments you'd like to share with us about it.
As you saw in the submission that I've made, I agreed with most of the recommendations made by this committee after your review. I think that the government needs to review those reports made by your committee and my submissions, including what they received from the public and during the consultations. And I'm hoping that they will start from there and not start from scratch.
Thank you very much. In your 24-25 annual report, you wrote that some institutions neither implemented your legally binding orders nor went to federal court, quote, breaking the law, end quote, forcing you to seek writs of mandamus. Are you standing by your finding that certain federal institutions have broken the law by ignoring your orders? And can you confirm whether the Department of National Defense is the worst offender?
I have issued 8 mandamus applications because of 8 orders that were not contested in court. It is the institution's right to not comply with an order as long as they challenge it in court. When they refuse to do so, I have been forced to take action myself. Out of those 8 mandamus, I think the National Defense has received about 6 of them. I have to say, though, good news is the National Defense is doing much better. I don't know if it's because of these mandamus application, but this year we've received the lowest amount of complaints against National Defense. It's not even in my top 5 institutions that are not meeting the Act this year.
So they're breaking the law less?
Yes.
Oh well,
they're respecting the Act.
There's something to be said for progress. You launched an investigation into ArriveCAN over allegations related to the destruction of records that were subject to the Act. Is destroying or deleting records that are subject to access to information requests a breach of the Act, and do your preliminary findings suggest that the law was broken in this case?
With respect to ArriveCAN, I'm sorry, but I won't be able to talk to you about the investigation. It's still ongoing. This is a very complex investigation, and as you just mentioned, including very serious allegations. So my office, it's part of our priority this year to finalize that investigation, and I will be happy to report on that investigation later this year. With respect to the allegation of destructions, it is a criminal act if it's intentional and if it's meant to remove the information from somebody's accessing it. So I cannot tell you at this point what our findings are with respect to ArriveCAN.
In your 2024-2025 report, you said that nearly 30% of requests across government missed legislated timelines in the previous year. In plain terms, does missing the deadline on almost a third of requests mean that the government, writ large, is failing to adhere to the law?
It is.
And what do you think is the remedy that's needed?
Well, currently the Act is requiring institutions to respond within 30 days of an access request or to ask for an extension. 30% or 33% of these requests are not being, that timeline is not being met. There's all kinds of factors. Consultations with other institutions taking way too long is one of them. Mismanagement of information and resulting in huge size of access and documents having to be processed is another one. There's a lot that needs to be done to the system, as I said in my submission in 2020, a lot to be done to this act to modernize it. Reducing consultations to a certain amount of time would be one of the way to reduce timelines as well.
I think you said that the government's plan for modernization is not sufficient. I think those were your words. But on the stick that might need to be used here, because I don't think that there's any amount of carrots that would move the needle. What do peer countries do? What is the harshest or most effective measure that's used for compliance in other countries? Are we an outlier here? It seems extraordinary to have a government that seems to be flouting this very important law.
Unfortunately, I've met with other colleagues from around the world, and we're not the only one having issues implementing the act. Whether or not we have a good, perfect act, it's in the implementation that really we can see if a country is doing well. Sanctioning public servants is not happening in any other countries because it's really difficult to know which person is responsible ultimately for the decisions.
The buck stops with the minister at the end of the day.
That's what I think. I think the head of the institution should be responsible.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Combating misinformation and disinformation. Can you speak a little bit to that and how you see the access to information regime as helping us address that issue?
Well, I think the act is, I always say the access request that doesn't need to be made is the best access request, because if the information is out there, if the information is reliable, if there's a policy on proactive disclosure, Canadians need to know that they can rely on the information that they're reading and that they're accessing, that they obtain, whether it's through journalists, or it's through their member of parliaments. But right now, if it's difficult to obtain even the reliable information from the government, where should they turn? Where are they going to turn? And that's where misinformation comes. We are doing such great job. The public service, is providing advice based on facts and statistics, and that information should be out there. We shouldn't have to respond to ask for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, to be clear, your orders are legally binding, correct? They are. Now, you had indicated, and your report outlines, that non-compliance on the part of government departments and institutions has been an issue. So those government departments and institutions that are not abiding by your orders are breaking the law, are they not?
Well, if they are challenging them in courts, they're not. They are allowed to challenge it, but if they're not challenging them and they're not respecting them, they are breaking the law.
And there are government departments and institutions that have chosen to ignore your orders and therefore are breaking the law.
It was an issue at the beginning. It seems to be less of an issue now. I think people understood that we now have been using the amendments application to force them into it.
Now, you indicated in answer to Mr. Barrett that your office has been forced to bring not one, not two, but 8 applications for writs of mandamus to force non-compliant, law-breaking departments and institutions to abide by the law. Now, going to federal court is costly, it's resource-intensive, is it not?
It is.
And so can you provide a number, a figure, or provide some description of the degree in terms of, from a resource standpoint, your office has incurred in order to effectively drag government departments and institutions kicking and screaming to comply with your lawful order?
Well, currently the Act doesn't make me monitor these decisions and these orders. But if somebody complains to my office that the order was missed. The only recourse that I have currently is to make an application for mandamus, which we've done. We have increased our number of litigators in terms of cost. It's salaries, and time for us. And sadly, in a sense, it's time for the requesters as well, because so far none of these mandamus applications have made it to a hearing. The institutions have always responded before we were able to get a judge to listen to our application. So basically, it's been just extra time to the institutions to respond.
But it's fair to say it is resource intensive.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And on March 7th, 2025, you wrote to then President of the Treasury Board, Jeanette Pettipas-Taylor, expressing concern about this pattern of non-compliance, and had requested that the minister issue clear and unequivocal guidance to institutions subject to the Act of their legal responsibilities, including complying with your orders. Did the minister issue such guidance?
She did.
She did. Okay, thank you for that. Now, is it fair to say that your office faces a persistent and severe funding shortfall?
Well, this year we were looking at a deficit of $600,000 based on the collective agreement that were negotiated and for which money that we didn't receive. But because of the review that the government has launched, we've decided to absorb that deficit. And we're not, I can't say that we're in a situation where we don't have sufficient funds, but we are definitely just enough to, we're managing our resources as best as we can based on the current situation in the government.
Thank you. And in 2024, you had submitted an off-site proposal to the Minister of Justice requesting $400,000 in permanent funding to maintain current resource levels. What happened with your request?
It didn't go anywhere.
The minister did not respond?
The ministers did not respond, no.
Okay. Shifting back to your orders, the right to go to the federal court for a review for those departments and institutions that apply for a review, the standard at the federal court is de novo, of a de novo nature. Now, your predecessor, Suzanne Legault, stated that there was, quote, no incentive for institutions to provide sufficient reasons to establish that information warrants not being disclosed during investigations, and for those reasons recommended removing the de novo standard. Do you agree?
Quick response, please.
It's a very tough questions because there's positive and negative on both judicial review and de novo review, and I would be happy to provide you some submissions in writing if you want on that.
Madam Commissioner, I'm a new member, so excuse me if I don't. Our legislation compared to the other developed countries like England, Australia, New Zealand, and USA, how comparative are we? And is our compliance less than those or on a par level with the other countries? And what do we need to bring those level up to?
Our legislation is now, there is one institution that reviews legislation, and they will rank them compared to other countries, and I think Canada is now 58 out of 109 legislation. So we're kind of in the middle. Our act is not the best in terms of its accessibility and transparency and the level to which it's the institution that it's applicable to. One of the place that I like comparing ourselves to is Scotland. Scotland has a very progressive legislation The commissioner over there has also the authority to monitor institutions and how they're doing, which I don't. There's a lot of also legislation that allows the Office of the Information Commissioners to do outreach and education, which I do, even though it's not my act, because I think it's important for people to understand what their rights are and how it's applicable. The implementation of legislation is really hard to monitor because it's within the administration of the government. And each institution is doing differently. So we have institutions that are doing really well and others are not doing as well with the same act. So this is something that's, so far, there's not a lot of tools out there to say which countries is doing better than others. But interestingly, like in Brazil, they don't have an independent commissioner, but every access request is on their website. Every time that it takes to respond to an access request is available. There's some tools out there that exist, and every time I see something like that, I tell TBS because I want them to compare and to see what best practices exist. But clearly, Canada can do better. We used to be doing really well, and at this point, we're not meeting up with the current principles in legislation.